Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much, ADGM, for giving me the opportunity of speaking at this stage. And thank you very much for giving me all of 10 minutes to talk about 1.7 trillion US dollars. So I'll start by sharing a personal story, if I may. So back in 2013, I was working at a large consulting company in Brazil, and I got a call from a headhunter saying that another consulting company was setting up a sovereign wealth fund group in the Middle East, and they wanted me to come and work for them. And I said, fine, but it's got to be in Abu Dhabi. And they say, why Abu Dhabi? I said, well, Abu Dhabi is where the capital is. So the name, the capital of capital, may be new, but Abu Dhabi has always been the epicenter of sovereign wealth in the world. So using that point in time as a reference, 2013, we had the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which was established 4 years prior to the formation of the UAE, basically to invest the oil surpluses overseas. We had the IPIC, which was basically born as a joint venture between ADIA and ADNOC to invest in oil and gas companies abroad. We had Mubadala Development Company, which was a successor of the offset program to basically bring knowledge and know-how into the Emirate. We had ADIC, which was an offshoot of ADIA to manage the financial services in the Emirate. And we also had Emirates Investment Authority, which to this day is the only sovereign wealth fund at federal level. Obviously, a few years later, we saw the consolidation of some of these entities into what is today the Mubadala Investment Company. And we also saw the emergence of yet another sovereign wealth fund, which is ADQ, which is a kind sponsor of this arena and event, and obviously some of its subsidiary, AD Growth, and eventually the formation of Lunate earlier this year. So this is a lot of acronyms and names, but this is just to say that this is what we call the Abu Dhabi approach. So Abu Dhabi approach means having different sovereign wealth funds for different purposes. And this is in contrast with other sort of GCC countries. So if we look at Saudi today, a PIF sort of amalgates all these mandates and purposes into the same entity. We look at Kuwait, we have a KIA doing the same. Qatar, we have the QIA doing all these purposes and mandates. And in Oman, we saw in 2020 the merger of Oman Investment Authority to also do the same. So let's zoom out for a second. Today, sovereign wealth funds manage 13 trillion US dollars. I repeat, 13 trillion US dollars. That clock actually turned to 13 trillion 2 days ago. And where is that capital? Well, over 5 trillion of it is in the Middle East and North Africa region. And over 2 trillion of it is in the UAE. And Abu Dhabi, we've heard it over and over again during these 2 days, manages 1.7 trillion of that capital. And that makes them, or that makes Abu Dhabi the capital of capital when it comes to sovereign wealth funds. But it's not only that. I mean, if you think about Abu Dhabi as compared to the rest of the Emirates, Abu Dhabi has 94% of the oil reserves in the UAE, 80% of the area, and around 70% of the GDP. However, only 40% of the residents live in Abu Dhabi, and that means that the GDP per capita in Abu Dhabi is much larger than those in the rest of the Emirates. And also, only 33% of the debt at UAE level is in Abu Dhabi. That means that the books of Abu Dhabi are much healthier than those in the rest of the Emirates, which are already quite healthy, by the way. But the fiscal position of Abu Dhabi is really enviable. Now, if we look at the future, the next 2 years, Fitch Ratings is forecasting 3.6% of fiscal surplus of GDP in 2025, 7% of the GDP of fiscal surplus in 2026. That would translate into an additional 60 billion US dollars flowing into the books of the sovereign wealth funds domestically. Not only that, but we are seeing the inbound efforts of Abu Dhabi, right? So we keep hearing about asset managers and service providers being set up here in ADGM. We've seen over 70 entities setting up office this year alone, which is probably going to be a historical record by year end. And also, if we look at the FDI, this is a UAE level, but if we look at Abu Dhabi level, it would be very similar. Historical peaks of FDI received by the UAE and Abu Dhabi in the past year. Now, let's look at the landscape of the sovereigns and sort of energy today. So a few years ago, the Abu Dhabi government set up the Supreme Council for Financial and Economic Affairs. Basically, it was the successor of the Supreme Petroleum Council and a few other entities, and it basically oversees all the energy or most energy and investment-related entities in the Emirate. So we got ADNOC, obviously, which set up Exergy a few days ago, actually, and they already completed the first acquisition with Covestro in Germany, which is quite unparalleled. So basically, Exergy is doing what IP was doing back in the day. So now it's just ADNOC insourcing that investment effort within ADNOC books. Then we have, obviously, the monetary authorities, right? So we have the Department of Finance at Abu Dhabi level, which has a subsidiary called CYVN that has also been quite active in the automotive space. So CYVN invested in NIO in China a few months ago and just closed a deal with Mumtalakat last week to acquire part of the McLaren group. So quite active investment entity as well. Obviously, we have the Central Bank of the UAE, which issues the dirham and has over 150 billion in foreign reserves. That is US dollars. And then let's move on to sovereign wealth funds. So these are all the sovereign funds we were talking about before. So ADIA, ADIC, or the Council, Mubadala, ADQ, EIA, and also Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, which has a smaller investment portfolio, and also Tawazun Council, which with H Group manage the defense-related companies. Also, we have the public pension funds, right? So Abu Dhabi Pension Fund manages the pension of all Emiratis living in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, and GIPSA manages the pensions of those living in the rest of the Emirates except for Sharjah. And also, we have the royal private offices. So what do we call royal private offices? Are basically family conglomerates owned or chaired by members of the ruling family in Abu Dhabi. And as you can see, there is quite an array of them, most notably the Royal Group and all of its subsidiaries that have been very active in the marketplace. So IHC, Multiply Group, Alpha Dhabi, G42, 2.0, and so on. So all this ecosystem, I mean, if you think about the economy of Abu Dhabi today, if you go through every single industry today, real estate, infrastructure, healthcare, consumer, and you see all the national champions operating in those industries today, they are propelled by either Mubadala or ADQ. So basically, Mubadala and ADQ are propelling the economy of the Emirates and also diversifying it. Of the list of the companies that you can see there, those that are in pink are already listed in the ADX. That means that either Mubadala or ADQ have taken them public and have managed to attract foreign investment into those entities. Yet, if we look at ADX companies today, 70% of the market cap is still owned by Royal Group and entities, and also by Mubadala, ADQ, and ADNOC. So there will be some work to do in terms of diversifying that capital base. Now, if we look at the activity of sovereign wealth funds globally, which is what we do, we identify what we call the Oil Five. The Oil Five are basically those sovereign wealth funds that are most active today in the world. Three of them are from Abu Dhabi, ADIA, Mubadala, ADQ, and then PIF from Saudi, QIA from Qatar. These 5 funds are basically eating the market share of global deal-making when it comes to asset owners and sovereign funds. If we look at them in another perspective, which is horizontal, 2024 probably is going to see, at the end of it, a historical peak in the number of investments coming from these 3 funds in Abu Dhabi only. So this is focused on Abu Dhabi only now. And again, we're going to see a historical peak in 2024 of investments. Now, where is this capital flowing? So 27% of the capital is still flowing to the United States. 17% is staying in-house, so it's a lot of investment in the country. And then the rest of it is very diversified across both developed and emerging markets. We may see this chart changing in the future as ADIA, Mubadala, ADQ are starting to invest more and more into emerging markets. Now, if we look at industries, actually, it's very, very diversified. So I would say that ADIA, Mubadala, ADQ, they have managed to do what they were set up to do, which is basically diversify away from hydrocarbons. So all these are companies that have been flowing from these entities. Now, The playbook is available in the report, so I will go very quickly, giving 1 or 2 ideas per sovereign fund. ADIA, again, very liquid investor, very biased towards developed markets historically, but increasingly in emerging markets, including a new office in India that they just opened recently. ADIC, very private capital focused, new office in New York, very increasingly active sovereign fund as well. They're rushing me through it, so I'm not sure I'm going to have time to go through it, but again, the playbook is available in the report. But finally, I wanted to give some departing remarks, which is, again, capital of capital, nothing new. Abu Dhabi has always been like that. Attracting foreign talent and companies today, challenges, disruption, technology disruption, geopolitics, but we believe that the growth will continue, and obviously the role that ADGM, ADIO, Abu Dhabi IPO Fund, and obviously the Finance Week are doing will be paramount to make that capital sustainable. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.